As a host today, I want to introduce Anita Bodnar, the Chief of Staff at Mindvalley and an OKR coach. We want to talk today about engagement of employees, especially during these tough times, and how to implement the OKR framework successfully in any organization. Anita, could you please introduce yourself?
Of course. You've done a really good job introducing me. So I work in Mindvalley. I've been there for the past 2 years. And I consider myself really lucky to be able to bring the OKR framework into our organization to align everyone to the big vision that we have in Mindvalley, which is shifting the consciousness of humanity. And in the beginning, so before going into Mindvalley, I was working as a change management consultant for a software company in the APAC region, mostly in Malaysia and Singapore. And before that, I was heading HR for different software as a service organizations in Scandinavia. So that's kind of more or less my background, and I'm a huge fan of the OKR system. I have my own company as well. Besides, this is like my weekend, my evening hustle, but I really enjoy working with small and mid-sized companies. And yeah, that's about it. What else would you like to know?
Wow, that's impressive. I mean, it's your passion. Yeah, that's I think the most important. I think one of the hot topics at the moment is engagement, and I would like to ask you, how do you engage your teams as a HR leader at Mindvalley when everyone works from home, Anita?
It's a tough question, and it's $1 million question, right? So one of the things we've also realized, this is something that we were lacking in the beginning when COVID hit, because a lot of our company culture is around connecting physically in a space that we have in Mindvalley. So even for us, it's been a really big challenge because I don't know if you know, Dirk, but our office space was regarded as one of the top office spaces in the world by Inc. magazine last year. So we create these spaces for people to connect, and we give each other a lot of hugs. We have our own hall where we're doing these company reports every single week, where people and teams can share about what they have been, what kind of success they have experienced in the past week. So even for us, it's been a challenge, and turning it into something more online has been one of our key focuses since last quarter. So one of the first things that we did, we have our CHRO and we have someone else in the team who is involved in events, but now she's actually helping us in HR. And we created like a champion group. And we have weekly cadences called Mindvalley Love, where we connect and talk about what are the new things that we can do to increase the engagement online. So one of the first things that we figured was all our meetings, when it comes to leadership meetings or executive meetings, they start with connection. So Zoom is a really good tool to accelerate that connection, because we have this tool, the breakout rooms. So we send people in different breakout rooms of 3 to 4 people, and then we ask them different questions, what they're grateful for today, or even just generally for them to check in on how they've been doing personally, professionally, in general. And then afterwards, we're trying to, so another thing that I started to include into our leaders meeting, for example, is before we end, so after all the agendas, before we end, we have a space of 5 to 10 minutes where we can share about the celebrations and who we are actually grateful for in the team. And it actually gives such an amazing feeling after that meeting. Like you leave this meeting and you feel this, maybe you have been recognized, or you had the chance to recognize someone and bring love to someone in the team. And it just makes things, we feel so much more connected. So that's one of the things. So another thing is definitely culture days. And For example, we're pretty famous for the Love Week in Mindvalley. The Love Week is an entire week during Valentine's time that we used to do physically in an office. So everyone has an angel, and the angel does not necessarily have to reveal themselves, and they bring some kinds of gifts to the person that they're being the angel for. And right now we're actually in the discussion, how are we going to do this offline? But when it comes to Christmas party, for example, we merge it together with our weekly awesomeness report, which is designed for teams to share about their successes. And then we had like a very Christmas edition slide deck with celebrations with the people who were the most recognized based on votes last year. And we also have someone who is a Zumba teacher. And then she created a special Christmas edition Zumba class for all of us, and we were dancing. All our cameras were on. So we try I just gave some examples, but to summarize, we create space in our day-to-day meetings and flows for people to connect. And also we make sure that we don't just get rid of the culture days and all the things that we used to do in a physical space just because of COVID. We try to recreate them online.
Wow, impressive. So you have to actually be very creative and create new tools and new ways how to engage with people also overseas. And at the moment, I think you're in Barcelona. Is that right? Yeah. So,
yes.
So, and your colleagues are worldwide, everywhere, I assume. So even now, I think you have to be more creative as a HR leader. It comes to the next question. What HR trends do you see in 2021 and in the upcoming years, Anita?
Actually, I was thinking for this question, I'm not sure about the trend, but what I'm seeing is becoming really important for us to look into is employment statuses, and how do we create an employment status that allows people to work remote and live wherever they want to live. Because I think COVID was an interesting test for us to see how productive we can be when working remote. And I think for a lot of the companies, for us in Mindvalley for sure, it really drove us to optimize our processes a lot more. And then we had this space of few months where we looked into, okay, how can we make our processes more aligned? What kind of tools can we use to for better performance? And now that we got there, and also with the OKR framework, where everyone's goals and priorities are aligned and they are in a centralized place, it actually gives us opportunity to live remote. And we can see a big rise of people and employees in Malaysia and Estonia who have that need. They want to think about the future of going remote or going back to their families, because bear in mind, we're from 63 different countries in Mindvalley for 350 people. And then our main offices are in Malaysia and Estonia. But then one of the biggest challenges is the employment, the rules, the taxation. So that's something that a lot of us are raising. Also some sort like information security wise. So what are the things that if your employment status changes from full-time to remote, what are the things that you can access company-wide? What systems can you use? So these are all burning questions for us to look into, at least in Mindvalley, and I'm sure that a lot of other companies are now dealing with this.
Okay, very interesting. You just also mentioned the OKR framework. I'm very curious, how did you implement the OKR framework at Mindvalley? And what is the progress now in your experience, or also the experience of your teams and employees?
So how we started implementation, it was January 2019, so 2 years ago. And exactly when I joined Mindvalley. So the way we started was step by step. So we started at the very bottom, or at the very top, sorry. So vision, mission, and the big, hairy, audacious goal. Where are we going? Why are we going there? And how are we going to get there? And then we broke it down into company-wide OKRs. And in the beginning, for the first quarter, we only looked at the company-wide main goals. And then from quarter to quarter, we went down into teams. So we broke down the company-wide OKRs into team OKRs. And for us, team OKRs, so we didn't look at departmental OKRs, but we went straight down into teams. And for us in Mindvalley, we work in micro teams, which means that we have 3 to 5 people in one team. So that means we have like 55 different teams. So when we started breaking down company OKRs to teams, I insisted we stay on the level of team OKRs for a while until our teams got into the written and into the behavior of OKRs, and they've learned how to create really powerful goals. So it's actually interesting because it was only last quarter, so Q4 2020, when I felt that our process around OKRs and teams adoption is so high, and the quality of our goals are really strong as well. That's when we believed that it was time for us to break team OKRs down to personal ones. So that's how the journey has been going. I'm really looking at now this next year, the optimization of the process. And to me, my goal was from the get-go to get Mindvalley to adopt OKRs fully. But different people mean different things about adoption. To me, what I can see, it's not only about having 100% of the teams or individuals having OKRs. To me, it's about looking at the data and seeing how fast, like how early in a quarter can we get to that 100%. So for example, in the past quarter, we had, I looked at the data and we only had the 100% adoption by the 4th week of the quarter. So which means it still takes us 1 month to get everyone do what is needed to do to have powerful goals in alignment with the company. So I want to look into the process and reduce that, because with OKRs, it's like a lot of different things, right? It's the process, it's the leadership, like how they're adopting it, how they're using it. Because what you want to do as someone who's leading that initiative is you want for the leaders to know what you know, what's in your head, and replicate that. So for me, that's the next step. So for the leadership to adopt the same way of thinking, and improve quality of the goals, and for me to reduce the time they have to hustle with it.
Okay, interesting. So you as an OKR coach, you have been working with a lot of companies. You're mentioning also small companies, medium company size companies, and also big organizations worldwide. What is your experience? Do you recommend the OKR framework for any company in any kind of industry, or does it depend really on the size of the company to implement the OKR framework? What is your experience there, Anita?
So any industry, yes, I would recommend. I don't see any reason why not. I work with companies from many, many different industries. And in terms of if everyone should implement it, I really doubt. I don't think so. So especially companies that have a very low hierarchy, and they already have a certain culture where anyone, like any employee, can text their CEOs, directly. That's a good indication for the OKR framework to work, because for some companies to kind of shift that mindset of the employees in the OKR framework can suggest their bottom-up OKRs, and they can suggest and define how they're going to be contributing to company-wide objectives. So that to shift that mindset in a company where there's no such culture would be much, much, much more difficult. So they would end up kind of using OKRs or calling the system like referring that they're using OKRs, but it's actually KPI system. So I think I wouldn't recommend it for everyone, but for the if the leadership team is really strongly so OKRs won't change a culture like that, but it will accelerate it. So if you already have some kind of initiatives around the low hierarchy culture, and you would like to implement OKRs to accelerate that, that's a good idea. But OKRs, the system won't change that culture in itself necessarily.